Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with the patch 14.3 rundown. This is our third patch of the 14th set. Last patch, not one of our better patches. I think especially if you're a competitive player. It really a history lesson in what one bad bug or one bad balance change can do to an entire meta. Unfortunately, there was just a really bad issue with one of the Exotech items.
Hollow Bow.
In conjunction with some of the minor changes that ended up being a bit too much, that really threw it all out of whack. And that's always been one of the challenging parts about balancing TFT is that one thing goes wrong and the whole house of cards gets knocked over.
It's true.
That being said, it's been 2 weeks. Time for another patch. Time for us to hopefully improve the meta significantly. And the other big news here is that we actually have one big thing coming out, which is a bunch of new content, which we'll talk about here. And the reality is each time we launch a set, we don't like, even though we're doing 3 sets a year and we're not doing mid sets, we don't want it to just kind of be like drop a set, done, buy. And so a lot of our designers get pretty passionate. They're like, oh, but what if we could add some more stuff to it? And so you're getting the benefit of that. Some hard work from people like Tim and Kent and Phil coming together to add a bunch more of exciting content to the game that hopefully livens up the set even more. So yeah, that's the stuff I'm really excited for.
New content.
Let's jump into it and talk about
Here we go.
All right, first off, so as I mentioned, there are a lot of new hacks. This is page 1 of 2. Let's go over them. First off, we have some new carousel hacks. The first of which is the Tome of Traits carousel. Yes,
man.
Tome of Traits is back. Now, keep in mind, after 4 days of PBE testing, I haven't seen it. So to give you an idea of how frequent it is, it's about that frequent. You're not going to see it that often. But when it does come back, I need you to note that we're trying a new rule set. This is not the old rules with how Tome of Traits worked. There's like the whole counting traits. That's gone. Now it basically says all those active traits have about a 25% chance of appearing. That's it. Phil did some fancy math. So if you only have 1 trait active, 25% chance of it appearing. If you've got 8 traits active, 25% chance of each one of them appearing. That's it.
Okay.
So that's the whole rule. Tome of Traits, if you see it, that's how it works. The idea is you should just take it, pop it, use it. That's it. So other carousels, 2-star carousel. When this happens, all the units on the carousel are 2-star. Keep in mind, they'll also all be the same cost. I've seen this twice with 2 cost champions.
Oh boy.
So everyone will get the same cost champion at least. It's not like somebody gets a 5 cost and you get a 1 cost or anything like that. One of my favorites, too many units carousel. This one's hilarious. There's just like 15 units on the carousel. It looks big and hilarious. So yeah, that one's fun. There's also an all 3 cost carousel and an all 4 cost carousel. Those obviously appear later in the game. Just changes the units. We did remove any spat and pan carousels.
Yay.
That and Tome of Traits, that's gone.
Yeah.
So those are all the new carousel hacks. And then another new hack that happens, I've seen this 3 times on PBE so far. This one's really fun, but you'll complete your PBE. Let's say you're fighting Krugs and you beat Krugs. All of a sudden it'll go, da-da, deja vu, the hack broke, and you have another round of Krugs. So it will double your PBE rounds, and there will be a stage 2-8 or stage 4-8. It's really funny. It's just extra loot, but it's really done in a fun thematic way. I like that one. That one's really cool.
Okay, so man, if you love resources in TFT, I have good news for you guys, man. You get more. If there's anybody out there who's like, you know what, I don't have enough gold, I don't have enough items, I don't hit my 2-star reroll fast enough. I have good news for you guys. This is gonna be real. This is gonna be real. Okay, it depends on what are the percentages. What are the percentages that can happen? They say it's lots of new hacks, but I guess it's like one hack that could happen in the course of a game amongst a few other hacks. So it depends. Mort said that he played it for a few days and he hadn't seen Tome of Traits. The reality is he can only play like 10, 15 games in a day, but a lot of people are going to experience this. If you guys don't remember, Tome of Traits actually got removed for being one, problematic for balance reasons, but also 2, because sometimes Tome of Traits was extremely powerful. You would open it up, you get offered an emblem. There was one meta in particular back in set 9 when verticals were so powerful that literally the optimal thing to do was to pick Toma traits at the beginning of each game, no matter what, and pop it and just force whatever emblem you got and you vertical. And it was 9 Demacia, 9 Noxus, 9 Bilgewater, so on and so forth. And it became very, very, very problematic. And that was actually the entire world's meta. This is the first time Title ever won a world championship. Ironically enough, the strategy for that one title of the tournament and the championship was that he waited to pop his Toma traits until everyone committed, popped his Toma traits in the middle of stage 3. He popped 2 of them and then popped 2 of the same one and then played the uncontested vertical and won. So it was kind of silly. And then the other part of it was that the rules were really opaque. You couldn't actually know what the rules were. Toma traits had if you had 6 traits on your board, then you could get like 1 of them. If you had like 8 traits of them, you get 2 of them. If you had 10, you could get like 3 of them. It was like very weird, and the numbers kept fluctuating. So the new rules do make it better to understand at a more simple level. But I mean, I don't know if anyone really misses Toma traits, or I haven't seen many people say they miss Toma traits. Are there people here that miss Toma traits? I've never seen people talk about wanting to bring it back because I think people have had bad memories associated with it. Maybe the new rules makes it a lot more bearable to deal with. I have no clue, but emblems are much more powerful. Emblems are really powerful, actually, because they actually change things with like pans. Pans actually give you benefits. Like Bruiser emblem is much better than just HP. There's a good amount of people in chat that say that they like it, they miss it, but obviously a lot of people are like, no, I didn't really miss it at all. And then there's also other stuff too, like all 4-cost carousel. Very swingy, right? If you're playing 4, this is like it cuts both ways, right? So people are like, oh my gosh, it's like too good for reroll. But if you're like a reroll player and then everyone hits their 4-cost 2-star because of stuff like this, it's like very, very swingy. So these system mechanics are gonna be basically power levels are gonna raise again. What I'm gonna say from these new hacks, the power level of a lobby is going to raise in terms of your expectations. So that's basically what's defining most of the set right now. Just the amount of powerful boards that are being developed, and maybe that's exactly what they want.
In addition, we have a bunch of new hacked orbs complete with new consumables. So these are some new toys for you to play with. First off is the bag of gold. When you get this, it'll say use on a champ to gain 4 gold, but that increases 1 every turn. So the longer you hold your bag of gold, the more gold you can get. I've gotten it up to like 20, 21 gold if you save it for a long time.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
Use it when you want. It's up to you. Salvager. This is one, interestingly enough, I didn't see in my entire testing, but it is there. You can use it on a champ, and it will remove their items like an item remover, but also break them down into components.
Nice, I like that.
This is one that I think a lot of people have been asking for a long time.
Yeah.
So try it out. Break apart items. Pretty cool. There's also implant size, which you can use on a champ to permanently give 350 HP and 20% size. Before you ask, no, the size doesn't do anything. It's just cosmetic. But you can give somebody 350 permanent HP. Cool. Then implant speed. I like this one. Zeri fans, I'm sure will love this one. But use on a champ to give them 20% attack speed and shrink. So you can have a little tiny Zeri dashing around. It's pretty cute. Other hacked orbs that can appear. Starter kits. This can appear only on stage 1. And it will, when you open the hacked orb, you will get a 1-cost, 2-cost, and 3-cost with a shared trait. So, for example, you might get Jax plus Alawi plus Galio. There's your Bastion starter kit. So everyone gets a starter kit. Now, Cypher is not excluded for obvious reasons.
Yes.
I don't think we need somebody opening a hacked orb and just getting 3 Cypher for free. That's probably not okay. But every other trait is allowed. So there you go. And then nesting dolls. I like this one. When you open up the hacked orb, out will come a single silver orb. You open up the silver orb, out will come a single blue orb, as well as the loot inside of it. And then you open the blue one, and out will come a gold orb and the loot inside of it. So it's just a bunch of fun loot that everyone gets. Pretty cool. So those are all the hacked orbs. And then there are some new opening encounters. And all of these are actually pretty cool. To split or not to split. Basically, you know the gold split event that randomly happens in the game? If you get this opening encounter, it will happen after every single carousel. So you just know that after every single carousel, they'll be split. The values will change. So you don't know what values you're getting. But there will generally be a little bit more gold in that game.
Yeah.
Group investing. This one's interesting. It's very similar, but different. After every carousel, there is a 40 gold pot. And so on 2-5, everyone will vote to split that, where everyone gets 5 gold. or raise it by another 40 for the next time.
Wow.
And so if everyone continues to push it, then after 3-5, it's an 80 gold pot. After 4-5, it's a 120 gold pot. And if you go all the way to 5-5, it's a 160 gold pot. And if you're crazy enough and somehow make it a 6-5, the 2 people left alive can split a 200 gold pot. So gets pretty silly. But hilariously enough, if you keep pushing it, it's actually like a no encounter game. So kind of interesting. Yeah. Reroll subscription. This is just like gold subscription, except instead of gold, you get rerolls. Cool. And then finally, 3 champions. I didn't see this one on my PBE testing, but 3 champions. Everyone in the game starts with a 2-star 2-cost champion, and we made sure everyone gets a unique one. So you can do what you want with it, but everyone gets a 2-star 2-cost champion.
Oh man, I might get stun locked on this page, you guys. The cup starts in an hour. I don't know if I have enough time to do this higher patch notes. This is I might get stun locked. So there's some. Okay, I want to start off with. I think there's actually some really interesting ideas in here. I think that like we can start with the one that's like pretty cool. I think salvager stuff like this, like the way to interact with your items, is like actually cool. I think those are always really good. Like, do I use it here? Do I save it? Right. I do think that it does get a little kind of crazy with like you get all these magnetic removers, you get all these forge, you get all these salvagers. But I do think ultimately having the ability to make these decisions are kind of is a cool thing. Bag of gold is an interesting concept of like, do I use it now versus later? But it's just again one of those things where it's like, is it too much gold? Right? There's a thing about set 14 which is a lot too much, or how much is too much? And we're like, are we getting too much gold? Or are we getting too many things? But I do think the concept is really fun. I actually really like the idea of like greeting versus not, because that inserts more levels of decision making relative to everybody else. Of course, it could favor people who are high rolling for low rolling, but that's just something that's very nitty gritty. But I like the concept. I think this one's actually insane. Give it a champ that permanently gave 350 HP. Historically, size has mattered. I'm really sorry to put the news out there, but I'm pretty sure historically size has mattered. It's mattered not necessarily for like, it's mattered for like tiebreakers on who you're choosing to auto attack, and even things like projectiles as well. So I do think size does matter in TFT. Starter kit. So this is where it starts getting kind of crazy. So like things like starter kit is like basically giving everybody their early direction. And it feels like what's going to happen is that everyone will just basically get their starter kit and then just play whatever that they get. And it's going to be like who gets dropped really powerful starter kits versus not. And then it's gonna create like big power gaps, I think. And that's like something that I think is potentially really dangerous. So let's put this patch for example. If you get Shaco, Vayne, and Jarvan versus, I'm trying to think of like a bad 3-piece kit. He said like Bastions, for example. That's like a completely big difference of gap. Not only just because of what you can play, but because you're trying to reroll, right? And so if you're like put in this like spot where it's almost like pushing people into directions that they already, it's going to favor people who are pushing directions that they really want to go versus people who get something that's just like, well, I got 6 gold. It'll feel like other people got dropped 2 duplicators and you got dropped like 6 gold. That's basically what the summary is. So it's dangerous. These lobby dynamics are going to be really interesting to see how it reinforces reroll if it is a reroll meta. And there's also like you combine this. I think what it comes down to is that individually, I don't think there's anything wrong with these ideas. I think maybe if I take a step back and I look at it objectively, I don't think any singular idea is necessarily bad. I actually think some of them are pretty interesting and fun, and I can see like why it could be good. But the problem is that it's the amalgamation and combination of everything. Not only can you get something like starter kit, you could get it with a 3 champion encounter, and you can get a 2-star carousel, right? And then you can get other hacked orbs. I'm trying to see if I can rewind. You can get like a 2-star carousel, and you get and then you get the usual stuff, which is like you're getting dropped prismatic 3 prismatic augments, and then there's just like it's the combination of everything that just sort of pushes a lot of strategies out the window, because it's like, have you optimized? Have you hit fast enough? Is your tempo high enough to keep up with everything? So I think that's where the danger zone is. And I feel like we've long passed that limit. And I think Riot says, we're not there yet. They're like, we can totally inflate more. And we think that there's room in set 14 to make it more like pounding more resources into everybody. And I guess I think it's fair to say that we're now in territory where this is the most amount of resources that we've ever had in TFT. I'm legitimately playing games where I'm quadra carrying. I'm like literally itemizing 4 carries. And I feel like that's like my expectation. It's almost to the point where if I ever play a duo carry game, I'm like thinking I'm low rolling. I'm like, how do I only have 10 items? Which is crazy to think about because I can itemize my primary carry, my secondary carry, my trio carry, and my quadra carry. And it's like it's kind of crazy actually.
All the new hacks. So lots of new content to play around with there. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to those. Those will be fun. All right, first off, AMP. AMP has not really had much success. The little success it did have was off the back of like Strategist and Kobuko being too strong. Now that those are dealt with, AMP isn't really playable because you have to play a Nidalee and a Nefiri and somehow still make it to get Samira, which is pretty tough to do. So if you make it, you should be rewarded for it. So the health is going to go up from 350, 500 at 4 and 5 to 400, 600. That's a little bit more bonus health. But the big swing here is that at 5 amp, if you're willing to play 5 amp, you'll get an extra power charge. Now what that means is like whatever part of your spell is getting an extra boost of increase. So that means Nefiri's throwing more dogs, Nidalee's doing more chain lightning, etc.
Appy's going to make worlds.
So hopefully 5 amp will have a lot more offensive power. I don't know that this is going to make it like S tier or anything. It's still going to be pretty hard to play. But if you get it, it should be rewarding, and hopefully that helps it. All right, Cypher. Cypher is getting a couple minor changes. This isn't going to really change it too much. First off, if you want to keep 5 Cypher in, it'll actually be a little bit more worth it. You'll get, instead of 55 AD and AP, you'll get 65, which feels a little bit more worth. Right now, basically everyone's keeping in 3 Cypher or just ditching it completely. We do want 5 Cypher to be an option, so there's a little power. Now, that being said, that does mean you still have to have like a Vi and a LeBlanc in your comp, so it might not be enough, but it's a step. And then the other change here is that right now, a lot of Cypher's power is a little bit heavily indexed on stage 2. And we did kind of want this to be a little bit like Heartsteel, where like you could pivot into it to stage 3 or even stage 4. And so what we're doing is slightly nerfing the amount of intel in stage 2. Stage 3 is the same. And then stage 4 and stage 5 is getting buffed. So if you're willing to play Cypher in the late game with 5 Cypher, you'll get a little bit more intel. Nothing crazy here. And then finally, Hyper Roll. For those of you that play Hyper Roll, Cypher was really, really bad, so it's just getting a big buff. So Cypher better in Hyper Roll. Cool.
Okay.
Next up, Dynamo. Dynamo is a good trait. We're pretty happy with Dynamo. We don't need to go crazy here, but 2 Dynamo is just a little too much free utility for a team.
It's very good.
Especially for things like, a Jhin carry or, an Aurora just playing 2 Dynamo. So 2 Dynamo is getting a 1 mana reduction. Pretty small. Nothing crazy. All right, Golden Ox. Golden Ox is not an S tier comp by any means, but it is certainly the highest ceiling comp in the game. And we're buffing a lot of the Golden Ox champions. We can't really buff all the Golden Ox champions and leave the trait where it is. So we're nerfing 6's damage cap to lower its cap a bit.
Okay, I agree with that.
So hopefully it's still playable. And again, the champions are getting buffed. So it's meant to be power neutral. Now, from what I've tested, this damage number might have needed to be like 26 or 27. So we'll see. If it is, we'll change it. But again, we couldn't leave it the same with all the champion buffs you'll see later. Street Demon. Street Demon 3 and 5, great place. A lot of weird versions. 7, not very good. So we are buffing 7 a bit. So
7's not very good.
That extra 2 AD, AP, HP. So 7 Street Demon should be a bit better.
That's news to me.
And then 10 is coming down a bit. 10's overperforming a little bit, not a lot by any means. This is one of those like it's 1.3 instead of 1.4. You know,
fine.
So really tiny nerf to 10 Street Demon. Okay, Anima Squad. For those of you that see green sentences and get scared, this is a green sentence. Anima Squad is going to be a bit better because first off, we fixed a bug with it. Or bad design, whatever you want to call it. But the way Anima Squad worked is, let's say you have a weapon damage of 100 that was scaling by the star level of all your champions on your team. So you had enough star levels to make it 200. The problem was that's supposed to be the way it works, but as they die,
Yeah, you lost it.
that number was going down. It was the current alive Anima Squad units.
It was
So
bad.
as your team started dying, your Anima Squad weapons got weaker and weaker and weaker, which is silly and not very fun. So now, whatever your star level was at the start of combat, that's the weapon power. So,
Yes,
cool.
yes.
That's better. That's a buff. Then in addition,
Greg, thank you.
we've rebalanced the scaling of the weapons very slightly by the way they're affected by stage and star level. And so basically, the long story short of this, there's a bunch of really fine levers we can tune. I can't go into all of them. But the short version is if you have an all 1-star Anima Squad comp,
Should be bad.
You're going to be weaker.
Yes.
But if you have an all 2-star comp, it's a buff. It'll do more damage. So Anima Squad's cap should be higher, but just throwing in 5 1-star Anima Squad should be weaker is the goal. And so overall, Anima Squad should be closer to playable. The last PBE game I literally played on stream, Anima Squad was doing quite well. So we'll see. But hopefully Anima Squad gets back to some of its former glory.
Okay. Sorry, that's not a good spot to. Yeah, you know what? That's a better pause face for Mort Dog. That is him reading some of these takes in chat. Okay, so let's break it down. Amp is not really very good in a lot of people's minds right now. But there actually is an Amp reroll comp starting to surface, and people have been trying it out in tournament this weekend. This is sort of this is actually a case of why TFT potentially patches too much, is because they made these changes before they even saw the meta start to shit. They made these changes before they even saw Vex start to pop up. That's why it famously people said, "You're buffing Vex? How's that possible?" It's because they decided that a week before Vex was even played. And then they pulled that. I'm assuming they pulled that buff because I think that's what More Dog said on Twitter. But like right now, the next part of the next part of the meta that's currently evolving is people are actually trying to play some Amp reroll. And so the top end of this comp actually is not bad, and it just got better. So maybe Nitro Amp, or maybe not necessarily Nitro Amp, but just Amp reroll in general. Like it's being played in China at the moment. So China, I saw some VODs of some Chinese players playing it, and it looked pretty good, especially if you can get to Samira. I know, lo and behold, it took entire 2 weeks to figure out how to play Samira in the game. That doesn't mean that Samira is good or she's playable or anything like that. Just the idea is that the change might look confusing to anybody who's very, very dialed into the meta, but like there's this change that was decided a week and a half ago. I don't know if this ends up making that comp insane. Maybe it is. Maybe it doesn't. We have to see the rest of the changes. This is a 5 cipher change. I don't think this is actually that big of a deal. No one out here really is trying to play stage 4 cipher for very long. It's just going to make the people who are like in the spot to play for the giga like 800, 700 intel stuff probably hit harder. But you already won the game. 2 Dynamo's really big splash utility. It makes sense that they're nerfing it. It's very, very strong, so it's all good. And then Golden Ox. Some people are like, how do you nerfing Golden Ox? They're buffing Golden Ox units. It just makes sense. He says that he thinks that it might actually be higher, but I actually think Golden Ox, believe it or not, this is a bad take. Maybe this is a bad take, but I think Golden Ox is actually in a pretty decent spot right now. I kind of like that it's like situational, but if you understand how to play it well, you can win out with it. And I kind of wanted to stay in that spot. I think Golden Ox has potential to be an extremely, extremely impressive trait if it ends up becomes like one of the best lines in the game. And I would prefer Golden Ox to always loom in like a B tier. Like if you have a good spot for it, you should play it, and you have to play it well. Otherwise, if it becomes way too good, I think people are going to hate Golden Ox being the best comp in the game. Like if you think Zeri's bad right now, just wait till you see Golden Ox be oppressive. If it ends up being the case. I didn't realize 7 Street Team was bad. I thought 7 Street Team is pretty good, especially if you play the Vanguard Jinx line. He might be thinking about like the brand Samira version of 7 Street Demon. But hey, I guess that reroll line wasn't that amazing either. So it's fine. I was just confused. I was just surprised by it. And also, this is a big deal. Not to be all like green. He's talking about me, all green sentences. But like Anima Squad's actually on the very low, kind of playable this patch already. And the reason why is because the good players, I'm going to pull out Greg since he rated me, so I'll gas him up a little bit. Greg actually has played Anima Squad this patch, and he understands that if you can hit the capped board state of Anima Squad, it actually still does pretty good. So now they're buffing that version of it, and they're making it more stable to get there. It's entirely possible Anima Squad is back to being one of the best lines in the game again. So I think this is a huge deal and probably one of the biggest buffs of the patch period. Anima Squad, I feel like it can't be bad now. Like the reason why it's bad is because it's bad during the most crucial part of the game, which is stage 4. But I'm pretty sure if they make it more consistent, now like Hyrule Anima Squad might be like really difficult to deal with. Aurora got gutted? Oh, okay, never mind. I don't know.
Right. Then we have Exotech. Obviously, Exotech, big story of this patch because you could play Exotech Zeri or Vexotech. A lot of Exotech. So let's go backwards here. The first thing is obviously we had to fix the hollow bow issue. Now the issue was especially on Zeri. Zeri could trigger the effect multiple times.
Oh boy.
And because you're already at max crit, you could get, 240, 300% critical strike damage, and your Zeri was pumping out insane amounts of damage.
Yes.
That was not intended. The buff was supposed to be you either have it or you don't. That's it. So you can only have one instances of the buff. This is a massive nerf to Hollow Bow Zeri specifically. Yes. Most of the other champions weren't proccing it more than once in the 5 seconds it was active. Really only Zeri could do that. Now, hypothetically, if you have 2 Hollow Bows, which is possible with that one augment, you can have 2 copies of the buff, but that's a pretty rare case. Now, just to make sure that we didn't end up in the same world, we want this item to be good on Varus, not Zeri. So we also pulled back on the crit. These numbers are backwards. It should say 60 to 40.
Okay.
60 to 40.
Okay. I was like, what?
It's getting jerked back that. And we put more back in the AP.
Okay.
So the item, again, is meant to be about neutral on a champion like Varus.
Okay.
But a massive nerf to Zeri.
Yes.
Zeri does not need to be running around with Hollow Bow doing these terrible things. In addition, Flux Capacitor. Flux Capacitor was really strong the first patch. It hasn't been as strong this patch. But one of the problems with this item is it kind of hard counters any high HP strategy. Did you want to play Cho'Gath? Oh, I'm sorry. Zeri was taking 15% of your health every 4 autos. That's not very good.
Yes.
So we are drastically nerfing Flux Capacitor's percent HP damage.
Wow.
Goes down to 8%. Still decent against something like a Cho'Gath. But compensating it with some attack speed and some AD.
Yeah.
It is supposed to be a good item on Zeri.
Okay.
If it's Zeri's best item, that's a good thing, but should open up some other strategies. And then finally, Cyber Coil. Hilariously enough, when we made the patch, so if this has changed, this is one of those things about locking patches, 10 days before they ship. But Cyber Coil was the one bad Exotech item. We've buffed it up by giving up 10 more armor and Omar. Now, that being said, I know Sejuani has gained a lot of steam, and so it's decent on Sejuani, and so Sejuani's will still be good with this, but that's kind of intended. But again, Hollow Bow nerf being the big one here.
Okay, I mean, not much to comment. I mean, all of it is like the right categories to hit. I do think Flux Capacitor is too hard countery. He's right. I don't know if any of you have picked Golemify. I don't know if you guys have seen Golemify or Dumbify, and then a Zeri with Flux Capacitor shoot it like a few times. It is ridiculous. So I do think that hard counter nature, they want to move away from that in general in TFT. So I think that's smart. But then this may mean that Flux Capacitor is just really good in general because 5 AD, 5 attack speed is a big deal. Hollow Bow, I mean, it's hard. It's such a big change that I hope it's still a playable item. It wouldn't surprise me if the bug is so massive that it becomes unplayable again, but our hope is it's not. Our hope is also that the bug is actually fixed as well. We'll have to see, but we'll have to trust him on that. This is a ton. This is actually just a lot of resistances at this point. The 65 is just like a lot. So Cybercore can't even be that bad. Like, because if you guys don't even know, how many of you knew that Sejuani has a passive that actually gives you more resistances? I'm betting a lot of you guys didn't even know that. So that's why Cybercoil is probably really good on Sejuani. So there's theoretically, it should be like one of Sejuani's better items. But the reality is Sejuani is so tied to her cast that the best Sejuani item is Protector's Vow, and best in slot Sejuani is 3 Protector's Vow.
On the champion side, a lot of green. Most of the champions you're going to see mostly buffs with a few nerfs in some areas. But let's talk about them. First up, Alistar getting a big buff here. Alistar is okay in the early game, but he's just not very exciting. No one's running around with Alistar 3s having any fun whatsoever. So let's change that.
Wait.
More flat damage reduction. 12, 18, 25 becomes 15, 20, 30. And the damage he does with his spell is being buffed by 20%. 25% at 3-star. You'll notice this is not normal scaling. It goes from 240, 360 to 600. This cow can hit hard. From my testing on PBE, it's a very, very fun comp now. Alistar can do some good work if you hit it early.
Yeah.
Build-A-Bud Alistar, I think, will be very, very good.
He already is very good.
Off. I'm not saying we're going to see Alistar's S tier, but hopefully you have some fun with Alistar now. Dr. Mundo, similar story, actually. And yes, there are a lot of bruiser buffs in this patch, so watch out for that.
Yes.
Dr. Mundo, similar story. In our testing, when we were playing him, we were watching him, have 10,000 health and crit people for 2,000. That just hasn't played out, unfortunately. So we're giving him some pretty big buffs here. He's going to heal more when he casts.
Wow.
His spell will scale off AD a lot more. And this means if you're playing him in like a 6 Slayer, he's actually going to hit a lot harder. And then also his spell is going to scale with his HP even more. So if he's got like double Warmogs, he's going to hit like a truck. These are big buffs.
Yes.
This is kind of what we wanted when we first designed Mundo. So hopefully this gets him to that for more glory. So Mundo 3s should be scary, hopefully.
Huh. Cooking pot Mundo.
Kog'Maw small buff. This isn't anything crazy. I don't think this is going to make Kog'Maw's very meta or anything like that. But Kog'Maw deserves to do some damage when you 2-star him and put an item on him. So Kog'Maw will do a little bit more damage. Morgana, this is probably one of the spicier changes here. If you just look at this number, you're like, this goes from 220 damage to 400 damage. That's almost double. That's
Spell
insane.
duration.
Well, not quite, but also kind of. The spell duration is going from 10 seconds to 16 seconds, which means when she dots somebody, it's going to last a long time. And if you can draw out the fight, she's going to have incredibly high uptime. Now, as far as the actual buff goes, if you look at the DPS here, it's only going from like 22 to 25, which is about a 12% buff, which is a sizable buff, but nothing insane. But the fact that it lasts a lot longer gives you some options to play like a Gunblade Morgana. From what we've seen on PBE, she's pretty damn strong. So expect to see some, hopefully some Morganas be playable. It does fall off in the late game, which again, 1 cost falling off, like good. But hopefully Morganas are actually exciting to get on 2-1. And hopefully this makes Morgana cool. And speaking of which, the last 1 cost here that really needs a little bit of love is Zyra. Zyra just doesn't quite have the same
I like this,
chunky hit that she did in the last set. So she's getting some of that damage back. So about a 10% buff here, a little more to her spell damage and her secondary damage. From what I've seen, something like a Mana Zane Zyra early can actually just like delete teams now. So hopefully Zyra feels a little bit more like an actual playable 1-cost carry. And so again, hopefully this opens up more early game lines. Poppy gets the world's smallest buff. Poppy is going to get 5 more mana. This helps the hero augment. This helps Cyber Boss early. If you get like a Build-A-Bud Poppy, it's not going to be garbage now. So small buff, nothing crazy. And then Shaco, we took Hyper Roll off the tooltip if you're not in Hyper Roll. This drastically changes the meta. Shaco will now be S tier and D tier.
Less reading. Thank you, Morch. That's what I wanted. Okay, Poppy. I feel like this. Yeah, I feel like this message doesn't change very much for Poppy. At least not on paper. I think Poppy's problems are much more about a combination of like the way Cyber Boss is incentivized to like try to play for a carry like Veigar and push levels and ignore Poppy. And I mean, maybe it makes something with the hero augment. Who knows? Maybe hero augment's broken. Also, it's not very 1-cost reroll meta oriented at the moment. Okay, so man. I think Alistar Build-A-Bud is actually already one of the best you can get. So I'm actually, I think a lot of people would have the impression that Alistar actually is quite a good unit already. So I think this is where people should already be, if you haven't been holding Alistar before, you absolutely should be holding him now. He is probably by far the best 1-cost now with this because flat damage reduction is really good early. He's already very difficult. If you ever got like an anima visage on Alistar, I don't think I've ever killed one in stage 2. Unless I'm like super high rolling, right? And I'm like level 6 versus level 4. I don't think I've ever killed that. That dude is actually kind of a complete menace. So I think Alistar's already quite solid. I think it's because the things around Alistar hasn't been very good. Like Golden Ox has been very hit or miss, and of course Bruisers as a trait has been very bad. And Moore says that they're buffing all the Bruisers this patch. So I think Bruisers are definitely going to be one of the top tier holds this patch. And then Mundo, these numbers are just so crazy to me that it's like, they look so impressive to me that I'm sure that there has to be something there. Like Mundo probably is like, maybe Mundo's now your Bloodthirster Titans, like Sterix Gauge IE whatever holder now, because that's just so big on paper. Maybe I'm intimidated by large green numbers, but Alistair Mundo openers are probably going to be really, really strong. So we'll see. Kog'Maw spell damage. I mean, again, I think Kog'Maw's like a pretty decent opener, kind of sort of the victim of the current state of the meta. But that's fine. Like one cost are stronger. They're making Zyra and Kog'Maw better, so it feels like there's better one cost openers. And then Morgana. I actually think Morgana's in a fine spot right now, so this will probably make her like pretty good as well, like one of the best. So these like all these get buffs are just like really big, really impactful. I don't think they need to buff Morgana, quite frankly. But one thing I do want to say is that Mort says that all these carries fall off. That's because all of them fall off. Any solo carry falls off. One cost reroll in general, like even Jaco falls off. It's just because everyone hits the capped board state in the game, so you just can't keep up. Even if you hit Morgana 3 and you hit another duo carry, it's still gonna fall off. I saw Soju play a game of Scrim where he had Moonlight Morgana 3 on stage 4 because he couldn't hit Vex. And Morg was doing a lot of damage, but she couldn't keep up with anything because the reality is everyone's like hitting Rengar 3, Jinx 3, or like things like that in stage 4. You can't keep up. So the whole like this one cost like falls off late game, like that's gonna happen to almost any carry. Twisted Fate falls off by himself, Vayne falls off by himself or by herself, so on and so forth.
Zyra just doesn't quite have the same.
So just want to point that out. These one cost buffs are really, really big.
They're really succeeding. And
sorry.
All right, 2 costs. If you believe some of the hyperbolic players that it's a reroll meta, and so we're gonna take some of the 2 costs that are really succeeding and give them a tiny bump down in most cases. So first off is Jhin. Very small nerf here. He's gonna have to auto one more time to get his first spell cast. Only his first one. It doesn't change his max mana. And the little bounces will do a little bit less. Not the big bounce. The big bounce will still hit really hard. Again, very tiny nerf here to Jhin. Vayne, similar story. Vayne is going to need 2 more autos to get her first cast, and she's going to get repeat casts a little less often by 10 mana. It's a 10 mana nerf. This will slow down how quickly that Vayne accelerates with her Ginsu's. She still will be a Ginsu's insane, nightmare. It'll just slow that down a little so that Vayne's not quite as capped as she was before. Veigar gets the world's lightest touch here. This is just a very minor bump. Some of this is to compensate for things like having his surrounding units get buffed. Some of this is just because of that jeweled gauntlet fix. He ended up being a little bit better. But overall, very tiny nerf for Veigar here. So again, Jhin, Vayne, Veigar, very tiny nerfs. Nothing major. Twisted Fate. This is one of the bigger ones, and this one's a little complicated. If you've played a lot of Twisted Fate, you know his best slot is Ginsu's plus Gunblade usually. And the reason for that is because he was gaining so much AP per auto. So, for example, if he had autoed 40 times in a fight, which is pretty common, upwards he can get 50 and even 60, but 40 times in a fight, that's 80 AP, which was making his spell do 80% more damage. That's pretty insane. And so because of that, you basically had to build Ginsu's. It was like where all his true power lies. We want to fix that a bit. So the amount of AP you're getting from Ginsu, like from your autos, is going to go down by a lot, 25% here, down to 1.5. So you're going to get less. His cap is going to be lower. That being said, like his first cast and his second cast will hit harder. We've buffed the base damage by 10%. Special card, a little less than that. But basically, what you can expect is if you build exactly Ginsu's Gunblade, this is a nerf because once you pass about 30 or 40 autos, your spell's doing less damage than it was before. You won't be able to close out fights quite as hard. But in the early game, let's say you're stuck with like a Shojin and a Ginsu's or slightly less ideal items. Those first 2 casts can actually hit a lot harder. And so hopefully this makes TF a little more flexible with his items, a little bit better of an item carrier as opposed to just like only exactly those items. But again, if you're literally looking at the Twisted Fate comp right now, it's a nerf. It's a nerf to that comp. So, and then finally, he was the last piece of 7 Syndicate we wanted to nerf. The problem with 7 Syndicate TF was he was throwing 3 cards, which basically meant 7 Syndicate was triple the damage on TF. That's too much of a buff. Double's already pretty insane. But now he only throws a red and a blue card. You lose the gold card. So it's even the lowest part, but it is a nerf.
Sure.
So he's still insane with 7 Syndicate. Shocker.
Okay. This TF nerf's a really big deal because the late game scaling is what's important. It doesn't matter his first 2 casts are hitting harder because he is a stall composition. His win condition is to ramp up with Rage Blades anyways. So even though the first 10 seconds of the fight, he might be a tiny bit strong. He might be some stronger. The fact is Twist of Fate is going to be a lot weaker. So I think this actually might make Twist of Fate not like he's already sort of like okay. He's in the middle of this patch. He was already sort of a borderline comp because he was sort of falling out of favor because a lot of people felt like he wasn't winning. And then the comp innovated by playing around Draven as a secondary carry. I don't know if you guys have seen, but the most recent version of Twist of Fate plays around Draven 3. So if you're still playing like the Kog'Maw version, and then you itemize Draven over MF, you give him like IE, Shojin, whatever. This version of the composition is actually quite solid. So maybe he's okay, but I actually predict Twist of Fate to be kind of bad. Because that's like a really big deal for late game fights because he needs to ramp. And it doesn't matter if the first 10 seconds fight he's a little bit stronger, he's still not going to kill the tanks fast enough. And he needs that time to ramp. So that's a pretty profound nerf. Okay, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't even think Vayne needed to get nerfed. I think the big problem with the composition, or the big power spike of the composition, is around Jarvan. I don't even think that's a controversial take anymore. I think most people have paired to that by now. But in case you haven't gone to the train, I don't even think Slayers is really about Vayne. And I think it's underlined by the fact that you roll at 7, and if you hit Senna 3, you primary carry Senna instead. I think Slayers is just a package anchored by the fact that Jarvan is the Renaissance man. He can do it all. He can tank, he can damage, he has utility, he can hold every set of items in the game. I mean, I made a Slayers guide on TFT Academy, right? Like my most recent guide that I made was how to reroll Slayers, and I went through it, and I listed builds that I literally have taken straight from my VODs of people who play like stage 4 builds because it just doesn't matter what you put on Jarvan. I saw someone put Last Whisper Adaptive Crown Guard, and that guy was still doing 6K soloing my team. It was just like, what is going on, man? This Jarvan guy is actually the GOAT. It doesn't even matter. I literally lifted this from my VODs. So I think this comp is completely propped up by Jarvan. And so I don't think Vayne actually even needed the nerf. But then also someone told me that Vayne's autos are doing most of her damage. So maybe this doesn't even matter that much because if Vayne is an auto attack champion, maybe her ability is not even that important. Who knows? But that's just my take. And then Veigar, I mean, I actually don't even feel like Veigar needs a nerf. I think this is, again, kind of like the first 3 days, the first like 3 to 4 days of the patch, Veigar was clear, was like a S tier comp. But I think that was because we hadn't optimized the meta. Vex wasn't even in the meta at the time. And so Veigar was like the best, like one of the best reroll comps in the game. So I think this was like a very, very light touch in reaction to the fact that Veigar was already was S tier at the time. Now Veigar actually feels like okay. He doesn't feel like too oppressive. So in hindsight, this Veigar doesn't need to get nerfed, but whatever. Hopefully it doesn't push him out of the meta. And Jhin is also still pretty good. So I think Jhin deserved to get nerfed last patch. This patch is probably just compensating for the fact that he should have gotten nerfed previous patch.
All right, that's the 2 costs. Back to the land of buffs.
It's important for the Rage Blades. That's true, actually.
Braum is getting buffed in a silly way. This isn't actually a Braum is tankier buff. But if you want to run like 3 or 5 Syndicate Braum and put a bunch of tank items on him, when he has the hat on, he does bonus damage based on his armor. Well, we're doubling that based on the amount of armor you have. So if you want to go Braum 3 with like Bramble and Gargoyle, it'll hit harder. We want you to try that. I don't think it'll be S tier, but let's see what this does.
Okay.
So that's it. Gragas, another Bruiser buff and a Divinicorp buff, but Gragas just not quite as tanky as other options like Mordekaiser.
Chugbug?
He'll be able to cast a bit more. This is also a buff to Chugbug.
Oh.
So, cool.
We're back.
Jarvan. Jarvan was definitely one of the biggest
go.
mistakes of the last patch.
Yes.
We overswung this.
Yeah.
We don't want Jarvans running around with, IE and frickin' hysterics deleting everything. That being said, it did make Jarvan more fun. And so we're not going to like completely revert it and make him back to, because in the first patch, he was basically a trait bot. And at least this patch, we're having fun with him. So we're just lowering that
True.
damage slightly. He still has that same high base AD. He still has that same shield value. We don't want to nerf Golden Ox too hard here, but Jarvan will hit a little less hard. That's it. Rengar is pretty close, and this is mostly, if anything, to compensate for the 7 Street Demon change more than anything. But Rengar is still just a tiny bit tanky. I know he's not like turbo meta right now, and if anything, he's falling off, which is why it was a very light change, but he's just losing 50 base HP, so he won't be quite as survivable. That's it.
Honestly,
Yuumi got over nerfed on PBE. Let's just not beat around the bush. A lot of people were like, it is incorrect to upgrade your Yuumi at all.
Yes.
We need to fix that. So we're swinging a little hard here. I wouldn't call this mega hard here. If you look at the spell damage buff, it's only a 5% buff. Nothing crazy
She's
here.
30 mana though, right?
But the mark damage is going up from 175 to 190. So this means Yuumi hopefully will start dealing some big damage if you have like a blue buff, get some amp out. Probably, again, I don't know that this is going to make Yuumi S tier or anything like that, but hopefully now hitting a Yuumi too early is actually a good thing. We'll see. If we need to go more, we will.
I mean, people saying amp reroll, but they buff 4 and 5 amp, and you weren't really playing Yuumi in amp. You were playing Yuumi in strategists, so that's different. Well, I mean, maybe the builds change. Who knows? Maybe now you do a Yuumi Neferi or something, but I can't really see that right now. Braum buff, I don't even know what to think about that. I feel like maybe, but I'm not sure. Gragas buff, didn't they do something like this last patch as well? They just keep buffing Gragas. So Gragas, Alistar, and Mundo, man, and Morgana, what an opener, man, what an opener. That opener might, if they didn't do anything to the Vex comp, man, that opener would be so crazy. Holy cow. We'll see. Jarvan, I mean, this is such a big swing, 70% spell AD. That sounds like a lot. He shouldn't really carry. Jarvan can definitely tank. I don't mind him tanking. Him doing so much damage is just obscene, so we already went over that. And you know what? Rengar is actually kind of a fraud. He's almost basically like around the Nocturne tier of last set, where you kind of just play him with artifacts, unless you're super high rolling. Maybe you hit him really early. Maybe you hit a Radiant BT or something like that. You give him survivability. But you know what? That's why I said, honestly, base, I'm just down for Rengar to suck. I hate losing this guy. He's just so annoying. So more actually acknowledging that that Rengar's already on his downfall. I'm down for Rengar to take a patch or two off, buddy. Good work. But yeah, Yumi's a meme. Completely a meme. She needed buffs. And I will say that when Yumi was a terror on PBE, but yeah, if you missed out on that, she was extremely dominant for a 3 cost. I'm down for her to be a lot better. If she is better, if Anima Squad's better, she also might be kind of an important unit for the Anima Squad mid game, which could be pretty useful. But someone said that Aurora's getting nerfed, so we'll have to see.
All right, 4 costs. 4 costs is where we're trying to put more of our buffs here. We want to make sure, it's not just a reroll meta. There are more things playable here, and that starts with 2 really big changes. The first one is Xayah.
What?
Xayah's just getting 5 more AD. Xayah is kind of the pinnacle of like the Marksman Vanguard comp, the Anima Squad comp, and if she's not playable, that's not a good thing. So Xayah gets more AD. Great. Aphelios. This one's a little complicated. This is a buff. Let's be very clear. This is a very large buff, but it's not as big a buff as it might look like. Now, the reason for that is if you've played current Aphelios, what you'll notice is that most of his power is actually in his spell cast. He shoots that big old thing that hits, and that thing hits really hard. It can like delete backlines.
We're buffing Vex?
And then he's stuck autoing with like these tiny little chakrams that tickle that basically do nothing. And so you're basically like, hurry up and get those crappy chakrams out so I can get back to the next spell cast. It's often why 3-star Aphelios loses, because 3-star Aphelios shoots his big bolt, doesn't kill the right target, and then is stuck doing the crappy little autos. So here's what's happening. He's going to do his first cast a little quicker, but then he's going to have to do more chakrams, so it's going to take longer to get to his second cast. That's the nerf here. That is a little bit of a nerf, but the chakrams aren't going to tickle anymore. The chakrams are actually going to hit really hard.
These numbers look pretty big.
So if you look at it before, it was like 6 autos with no chakram, 6 autos with chakrams, repeat. Now it's 5 with no, 8 with Yes. That's 1 more auto per big cast, but those 8 with Yes hit much harder. And so actually getting the chakrams will feel good. And when he's in that state, he's going to hit like a truck. This is almost doubling their damage. So again, buff to Aphelios is the TLDR here.
Yeah, this looks like a massive
Cho'Gath.
buff.
Cho'Gath is the next one. Cho'Gath, unfortunately, even in 6 Bruiser, is like, meh. He's just not really living up to Cho'Gath. Now, Cho'Gath, if people often ask me, what's the hardest champ to balance? It's going to be Cho'Gath. Cho'Gath is absolutely, with this design, going to be the hardest champion to balance.
Yeah, I'm down to scrap it. He is on a
nice edge where if he is able to cast 3 or 4 or 5 times, the dude goes infinite. He can't die. He's going to be difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
If he dies before his like second cast, he looks like a joke and he's a terrible champion. He's going to be able to cast sooner. He's got less mana, and he'll scale with AP a little bit better. From what I've tested, he seems decent. But I'm playing PBE lobbies. We'll see. If this overbuffs him, we'll see. We'll see what that does to the meta. If it underbuffs him, okay, we can deal with that. But Cho'Gath will be better. Definitely consider trying him.
Yeah.
Should help a lot of lines.
This guy looks kind of good now.
Should help the Boombot line. Should be good. And then finally, Vex. Now, I know a lot of people are looking at this going, what are you doing? Why are you buffing Vex?
Yes, what are you doing? Why are you buffing Vex? Please,
the
Mort.
logic behind this here
Why
is that Exotech did get some pretty chunky nerfs, and this is only her overhealing conversion, which means you have to be running something like a Gunblade, and it is a very small buff to only that true damage percent. And the reality is we're not seeing a lot of Divinicorp Vex. It's like, that's not a thing. It's like someone found one Exotech line, and that's all that's really being played, but we want to try to promote things like Divinicorp Vex. She does need a little bit more oomph. This is going to be a buff that's happening.
Does she?
And yes, we'll see. If Vex ends up being S tier, we can all,
she already is S tier.
Tease Mort later, but I do feel pretty comfortable with this. It should be fine. In addition, the other thing is we needed her to contest things like the buffed Xayah, the buff Aphelios. We need all the 4 costs to be equal. And for that to be true, this did have to happen. So
it did have to happen.
See how it plays out, but yes, it's happening, and yes, I think it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Okay. He hasn't talked about Xayah.
All right, a couple small ones here.
Actually, let him finish. Let him finish.
The brand nerf.
Let him finish.
Barely a nerf. This is like 2%, and it is literally just to compensate for the 7 Street Demon change. That's it. Brand should feel about the same. You'll barely notice this. Honestly, we probably should have just deleted the patch note because it was so small, but it's a tiny change.
I'm down to delete it.
And then Annie.
This guy doesn't need to get nerfed.
Annie in the amp comp. Now that we took all that power out of Tibbers, we can put it back in Annie a little bit more. And so if you're playing like 4 or 5 amp, those extra little fireballs will have a lot more kick to them. This is, again, about like 12% buff to those little fireballs.
Amp.
So hopefully if you have amp Annie, it will feel better. Cool.
I mean, okay, yeah, like, okay, okay, man. All right. Okay, I'll start with the easy stuff. As they buffed Anima, they buffed Xayah, they buffed they are buffing around it as well. It should be pretty good. I do think Anima Squad is going to be a very real line. It wouldn't surprise me. I know everyone's focusing on the Vex line right now, but I'm pretty sure this Anima line is really good now. I'd be blown away if Anima is anything less than like the top of A tier. It has to be really good. I think Anima is going to be really, really powerful. I think I can't really understate how powerful I think. Okay, well they said they didn't nerf Aurora, but still, Anima they're just buffing Anima like crazy. And then this Aphelios nerf is like kind of a big deal because I'm actually of the belief that a lot of people still aren't necessarily like optimizing around Aphelios builds. I think that's like one of the things because like everyone understands that Aphelios is kind of a trash unit. But I think a lot of people don't even really understand what his ability does. They just think play Rageblade and just like do whatever and to figure it out. But this is like a massive buff, and this is also why they nerfed Golden Nox. But it was needed because Aphelios is a joke. So I think buffing Aphelios in some capacity makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Cho'Gath, the 10 mana is a really big deal for scaling casters like Cho'Gath. They also buffed his tree a lot. Maybe it's like Protector's Vow Cho'Gath, cast becomes unkillable. Could be really difficult to deal with. They also nerfed a counter to him. They nerfed things like Flux Capacitor. So Cho'Gath can be really problematic as well. That is also entirely possible. The Vex buff is actually pretty baffling in the sense that I heard his reasonings for it. But again, I think that this is sort of a victim of just like not being able to actually watch the meta develop, and they have to lock in these changes ahead of time, because I'm still fairly certain that the meta around Vex is still being optimized. I think that if you look at these stats, 4.6 for these Vex comps, but I think people are not good at Vex. They just play her at a level 1 strategy, and they're not even actually optimizing around like whether or not you're supposed to play 3 or 5 Exotech. I actually do think there are Divinity Core variations of it. I think there's people who like think that Vex is purely gated around Sejuani, which is not true. You can actually have boards like Zac be your frontline, and that's completely fine for Vex for a frontline. What Vex needs is frontline stall. And so what this ends up doing is, you know what you're going to do? You're actually going to be putting Cho'Gath in front of Vex now. Like, everyone's going to be like, LMAO, Sejuani is your frontline, but guess what? If Cho'Gath's the best frontline, you just stick Cho'Gath in front of Vex. So now it's Vex Cho'Gath. It's not Exotech. It's the fact that there's no good frontline core for Divinity Core. There's no good frontline. Your tank is Gragas, and that's it. And so we found out that Exotech is the best frontline shell in the game. Oh, sorry, Az, I'm running. Okay, I'm just gonna finish this rant though.
I'm getting more dog.
The best frontline shell in the game. I'm just gonna type it in chat. The best frontline shell in the game is Exotech. So we just go Vex plus whatever is the best frontline. So if Cho'Gath equals best frontline, new meta is still Vex, but just with Cho. So I think this isn't a good buff. TLDR. Okay, that's my summary of it. Okay. Sorry about the ads. It's just you don't need Exotech. It doesn't even matter. People are gonna laugh at the Sejuani. Also, Sejuani not getting nerfed is not that big of a deal. I think people are like calling for Sejuani's head. Let me ask you something. Is Exotech that problematic if you don't have Hollow Bow? If you don't have Hollow Bow, and if the best frontline isn't Exotech anymore, let's say Bruiser is the best frontline, is even that big of a problem? I don't even think Exotech is that big of a problem. I think it's okay.
First off, on the nerf side, Aurora and Viego have been kind of the dominant 2/5 cost for 2 patches. Time to pull them down a little bit. So Aurora 2 gets a big nerf here, nerfing her base damage by like 25%.
Long overdue.
Most of her damage is in the split, but even that's getting nerfed by like 20%. So this is a very, very large nerf to Aurora. Aurora is not going to be the like necessarily best cap to every end game board. Now, 1-star Aurora got off pretty lightly.
Bro, Viego.
Because 1-star Aurora wasn't really winning games by herself.
Man.
But man, 2-star got out of control. So 2-star Aurora, pretty chunky nerf here. From what we've seen, she seems more balanced on PBE. So, and then Viego. Viego's the other one that usually caps boards. He just does a lot of damage. He heals up pretty immensely. And he has that extra golem, which can provide a ton of other value as well. So we're nerfing his soul heal. That's the healing he gets when someone dies. He just gets like passive healing. That's getting nerfed pretty substantially. And his spell damage is being nerfed by 10%. Now, from what I've tested here, he's still really freaking good. I still expect Viego to be one of the best 5 costs. This one, I don't expect to move the needle quite as much as players might have liked.
Oh.
So keep an eye out for Viego.
I feel like this is a big deal.
He's still quite good. On the other side of the coin, we have the buffs. Samira kind of, obviously got over nerfed from that B patch. We're giving her some more AD back, trying to get her up. Obviously, we can't go too hard, but hopefully a 5 amp Samira is scary, or even just like a 2 or 3 amp. Again, from what I've tested, it seems like Strategist might be a little bit back on the menu. But
yep, Annie Samira
should feel better.
They buffed Annie Samira and Yumi.
Urgot's always felt a little bit below the other 5 costs. He's exciting because he generates all the items and stuff like that, but he doesn't have the same chunky hits that a lot of the other ones do, which really sucks for comps like Boombots. So we're fixing that. He's going to be able to cast more often. He's going to have about 5% more AD. And when he's casting, that'll deal about 5% more damage. Nothing amazing. It's not like huge buffs, but like Urgot wasn't way under or anything. So
1% buff to 3-star.
Urgot will be better. That's a good thing. Sweet.
Okay.
All right. And then we have
that's it. Okay. And then they did the large Kabugo rework. These Aurora need to get nerfed last patch. And then, okay, actually, to be fair, remember how last patch everyone was like blown away that they didn't nerf Aurora? Well, they didn't nerf Aurora, and it turns out there was even more bigger fish to fry. So this was a patch late, but overdue. Aurora, as everyone knows, is still really, really good. And then Viego getting nerfed is also basically Aurora Viego capped every board. They fit into too many things, so this makes sense. And Samira, another 5 AD. I could see it. I could see strategists coming back. Samira is really good, and they buffed everything around her as well. They buffed 7th Street Demon. They buffed Strategist, so they're giving you multiple ways to play her. Oh, they're buffing Amp as well. Urgot actually is kind of not even that good of a unit. He's actually did need to get buffs. So this all makes sense. Nothing really wrong here, I think. At least the direction. I'm not sure about the numbers, but hopefully Aurora's still playable.
Wasn't way under or anything. Change here. Kobuko is getting his spell completely reworked, essentially.
Man, I'm getting dogged again.
First off, his attack speed is going from 0.8 to 1.0. So this dude's going to be slapping fast. He's going to be doing his thing. But now he has no mana. He has no mana bar. There is no mana on this champion, okay? He just has a passive that says he deals bonus AP damage on hit. And if you have Cyberboss active, this is a big change. Instead of his ult getting bigger, his passive gets bigger. So if you have 2 Cyberboss and he's the Cyberboss, when he slaps, it'll be a 1-hex AoE that'll do some bonus damage. So he doesn't need Cyberboss quite as much as he did before because, and we'll get to it a little bit later, once he hits half health, he triggers phase 2. In phase 2, and then he's enraged for the rest of the fight, where he gains double attack speed, 30% Omnivamp, and his passive goes up in damage by 33%. So phase 2 is like, the boss is in hard mode. It's hard. Yeah. Now, when he first enters phase 2, he gains that shield he's always gained. It's a bigger shield, actually, but he's not that tanky, so it helps him. Then he casts his ult. Now, his ult is always 2-hex AoE. So throwing a Kobuko on your board now is always 1 2-hex AoE CC. So he's a lot more flex now, which is kind of cool. You can play him in just any bruiser line. You don't need Cyberboss to get that really good utility.
Okay.
That's cool. The spell, though, does not scale with enemy HP anymore. So no more like grabbing someone's Dumbify and hitting the enemy team for 3,000. That's not a thing anymore. It's just AP damage.
Okay.
Now, all of this is to say that he is intended to be like an AP bruiser, where you want AP on him, a little survivability, and he's attacking so fast in phase 2 and healing up from that Omnivamp that he can do some good damage. He's also you get that 1 ult that's really valuable, makes him more flex. Should be really good. From what I've tested, I don't think he's going to be like the main carry in many comps, but he'll be a great secondary carry, which is kind of what 5 costs are supposed to be. But give him a try. And like I said, hopefully this is an improvement. We don't need Kobuko's casting like 3 ults in one fight. And hopefully there's some cool moments where he's running around slapping people in the back. But yeah, give him a try. Should be a lot better.
I have no clue what to think of this, man. This is just so much. I know it sounds silly, but this is just so much reading, and I have to imagine how the fight's gonna play out. And I'm like, what am I playing Titans? Like I just listened to more talk about it for 3 minutes, and I feel like I understand this less. So I'm just gonna go ahead and wait and see. I don't know. It could be broken. It could be really terrible. Who knows, man? Who knows? I'll just wait and see.
All right. That's it for champions. On to augments. Poppy Hero augment. Oh, by the way, so augment,
well, I think I'm gonna have to go a little bit faster because I have to like end this in like 5 minutes.
We did a pass, and for the most part, you're gonna see a lot of nerfs.
Fast mort, speedy mort.
Augments this time, we basically were like, okay, there's a lot of importance coming from augments, and there's a few too many augments that are like too key or too swingy. So a lot of augments just kind of got the like tap down, and so you're gonna see a lot of red in the next section. We went with buff champs and traits.
Good.
Nerf augments.
That's good because they keep adding more and more resources to the systems and encounters. Like if the augments become, they can't just keep adding more and more into the game. Nerfing augments is actually fine, in theory, at least.
A couple exceptions here. Poppy Hero augment, still weak, 10% buff, bigger splash. From what I've seen, it's a little bit better and still not going to be like, it'll be like B tier. So Eye for an Eye and Eye for an Eye Plus were giving too many components for silver.
Yep.
Those get nerfed. Glass Cannon 1 was way too good compared to Glass Cannon 2.
Yep.
And just too good in general.
Agreed.
So it gets nerfed.
Agreed.
Rig Shop, way too good for enabling 3-cost comps. It still will. It just didn't need 9 re-rolls on top of it.
Yes.
So it gets nerfed down to 5.
Agreed.
Rig Shop, a little worse.
A
On
lot
the gold
worse.
side,
Yeah.
Chugbug. Another buff to Chugbug. This is the other hero augment that's still really underperforming. Remember, Gragas got buffed. A lot of Bruisers got buffed.
Yeah.
And Chugbug got buffed. So
Yeah.
hopefully this helps. But yeah. Crown's Will, just a little too
Whoa.
good for a generic augment. 2 less
What?
armor. Cut Purse no longer appears on 2-1. Getting a Rengar and a Graves on 2-1 just ended up being too good. Cyber Deck. I told you before, this was the most overpowered augment we'd ever shipped, or at least in a long time. Even at 2 items, it was still a really, really, really good augment. Giving 2... Again, if you compare it to BRB, you get 2 full items. This was 2 better than full items. That's too much.
This is kind of much
So,
though,
yeah.
isn't it? One item, one item. That's a little much, man.
That's just one.
One
Glass
item
Cannon
is
2,
yeah.
not good enough
It's
compared
a little
to Glass
much,
Cannon
isn't
1,
it?
so it's a small buff. High Score. This is one that really enables Cyber Boss a little too easily, to be frank.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
a lot of the later breakpoints,
It's OP.
It's basically every breakpoint after the 3rd is now harder to hit. It'll take longer to activate. This is a nerf to High Score, so that augment's going to be worse. Item Collector 2, bit too strong, so less AD and AP. Reinforcing Skeletor. This is the Bruiser one where they die, they gain health. Just really not good enough compared to like Cooking Pot, so it's going to get even more health. Cool.
In general, there's a lot of augments that are the Exotech tax, just letting you know.
Sated Spellweaver. This one in particular, especially as people figured out how good it was with Vex, this got nerfed. And so if anything, this is the secret Vex nerf that really lowers her extreme caps. But we're lowering the Omnivamp you get from Sated Spellweaver. We're raising the shield to sort of compensate, but that much Omnivamp was a little too much, so that's getting nerfed. Spear's Will, less starting mana. Again, generically too good. Spirit Link now only works on champions. If you've ever had to face a Golemify or Dumbinify Spirit Link, I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened.
Yes.
Ouch.
Yes. Golemify.
Trait
Oh
Tracker.
my god.
Trait
So
Tracker,
broken.
this set, now that people have created a bunch of guides and have figured it out, we like this augment when it's sitting at like a 40% top 4 rate and like a 19% win rate. It's like high risk, but it can cap out well. It was above those numbers. And so we are bringing it down. Trait Tracker is going to lose one of its emblems. If we have to go down to 4, we will. I doubt we'd go lower than 4. If it ever has to go lower than 4, we should probably just disable the augment. But 5 should hopefully bring it down, as well as some of the extra.
Still pretty good. It's still OP at 5. That's my take. I think
Speaking
it's
of
still
which,
OP.
Trial Run, that Golem now just doesn't have bonus HP and AD, so that's also being nerfed. And then finally, Vampiric
Exotech
Vitality.
tax.
The amount you were healing from this, the player health-wise, is being nerfed. This augment's been secret strong for a while, especially in a Cypher comp. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No real. I mean, these are all like they all make sense. I guess. I guess I didn't really think Spears was going to get nerfed, but I guess everything else makes sense here.
On the Prismatic side, Coronation, a little too strong, less attack speed and AP. Cool. Cyber.
Oh, Trait Tracker like is very OP because they buffed all the they like half the emblems give you like another effect. So Trait Tracker was always going to be OP. They might have to nerf it again.
Link 3, a little too strong, less HP, less mana. Endless Hordes and Endless Hordes Plus. This augment stinks. It's quite bad. Big buff to Endless Hordes to get you to try it. The HP reduction will only be 12% now, so you get 3 more units at the cost of 12% of your army's health. Should be interesting. Future Sight. This augment is really, really good. Now the dummies no longer scale as the game goes on. You don't really need a 2,000 health target dummy that has Zephyr and Shroud.
Yeah.
That's a bit too much.
Still probably
Hall
too
of
good.
Mirrors. The creator of this augment really, really tried to cook something fun, but every time we ship this augment, there's
Exploits.
just so many bugs.
Yeah.
There are so many. I think I've seen 3 different bugs with this augment, and unfortunately, we can't really spend that time fixing all those bugs for this one augment, so it is being disabled. I'm sorry. Goodbye, Hall of Mirrors.
There are some exploits that literally just win the game on the spot. If you copy certain units, you automatically win. Like if you actually just play a single Viego. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to talk about it because the patch is still alive. But yeah, there's many problems with it.
Lucky Gloves. This is one that's actually been overperforming for a while. So both Lucky Gloves and Lucky Gloves Plus now, instead of 3 gloves, you're only going to get 2. Pretty chunky nerf to Lucky Gloves. And finally, subscription service. You're going to get a little bit more gold per stage.
Oh,
so
Exotech tax.
A little more fun.
I don't know.
And finally, that gives us to the bug fixes.
I don't know if anyone was really asking for Lucky Gloves getting nerfed, but I guess it was still too good. Subscription service. Okay, yeah, that makes. I mean, it's not that good of an augment. They're buffing forecast. There it is.
Fixed a bug for Golden Ox's prop. Next bonus percentage being incorrect for certain breakpoints, leading to inconsistent tooltips. It's just a tooltip change, not a functional change.
Okay.
Fixed a bug on Scapegoat Augment tooltip, incorrectly saying it'll grant 1 gold when it actually grants 4. So you get a little. You always got the gold. It's just a tooltip fix.
Cool.
Hollow Bow tooltip reworded to better indicate that the bonuses are applied the moment the champion begins casting. Just a wording change. Bulky Buddies will no longer update in combat if a unit is summoned during combat, like from Aurora. So it was possible for Aurora to mess up your Bulky Buddies. That's fixed.
Oh.
Fixed a bug with Thorn-plated armor augment that wasn't scaling properly for stage 5+. This is a buff to the augment essentially after stage 5.
Didn't even know.
Fixed a bug where emblems could show up on stage 5+ carousel when they shouldn't. So there will be less emblems on stage 5+. Cool. Bruiser Circlet now correctly grants a giant spell.
You love it.
Fixed.
I love it.
Fixed a bug where Twisted Fate would not throw enough cards if there were less targets than expected. This is a buff to TF when there's only one target left, usually. Anger Issues no longer transforms Radiant Exotech items. Congratulations to the player who hit 10 Exotech with Anger Issues.
Wait,
Brink of Dawn
what?
now properly... Okay, this is a really interesting one. I want to call this one out. Brink of Dawn, the Radiant Edge of Night, now properly heals the holder. It wasn't healing before. This item got just a big buff because of this bug fix. So watch out for Radiant Edge of Night.
Wait, really?
Fixed an issue where Misfortune would aim at questionable places during the start of her ability. Shout out to Giovanni. He went in, rescripted this ability, so hopefully no more Misfortune randomly shooting 2 or 3 waves in the wrong direction.
Okay, wrong direction is understating it. She would ult at your own Aurora. Like, you would play Aurora, you know, her 5-cost Dynamo. She would ult at Aurora, and so she would ult at your own bench. Like wrong direction is like you see Ziggs throw a bomb and he hits 1 unit instead of like the 3. You know, that's like wrong direction. Misfortune aimed at your own bench. Like, how questionable places. Yeah, that's a new one. If we're looking for a new emote, aiming at questionable play. Oh my god, man. I can't even.
And then finally, Executioner Circuit has been re-enabled and now grants a Vex because there was an issue where it was granting Zed, not Vex, which is silly, so we disabled it. Now it's back. So, cool. There you go.
There.
All right. So that's all the changes. Quite a bit. This is definitely a bigger patch with all the new hacks, with all the champion buffs, all the bruiser buffs, the hollow bow change, things like that. We will keep a close eye on this meta.
Holy, this patch is crazy.
Normally, this is like when we would say, like, okay, cool, this is our last big change, and then we're going to kind of leave it and do balance change from here on out.
Nope.
That's not the case. There is one more bigger patch coming later. We'll have to wait and see. But for now,
6
enjoy this
costs.
patch. And worst case, I mean, if it goes rough,
It's
we'll
coming,
change
guys.
it. Worst case scenario, if a
6
patch is
costs.
bad, you have to wait 2 weeks. Best case scenario, it's sooner than that when we
Whoa.
patch. And even worst case scenario, if you're just like, man, this set's not gelling for me, well, the patch after this one, Remix Rumble is getting brought back. So you'll be able to play that as well. So, yeah, there you go. All right, I think that's it for me. There you go. That's your patch rundown. Cool. Hopefully you guys enjoy this patch even more than the last. And yeah. All right, that's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.
All right. Thank you very much, Mort. Honestly, man, I think Key and Sunrise are really best. I feel like this patch is like, I actually don't even think the ideas are bad. I just think it just feels behind. And I think it could be because of the way TFT is structured within League of Legends, because they have to lock in the patch in. It could have more reasons behind it, but the reality is it does feel like a lot of the stuff, it's like small, right? There's small and big things. The big things I think already we've hashed it over, but even stuff like, you know, did Vayne and Veigar need to get nerfed, right? These are like small little subtle things. It's because we didn't have time for the meta to play out, but with our knowledge, the 2 days before the patch, it does feel like the patch is not hitting, like it's over nerfing things that don't need to get nerfed, like brand getting nerfed. When literally, like, I have to convince people to stop playing Brand in tournament. It's averaging a 5.1. Part of it, there is a little bit of bias in this. It's, again, a small sample size. But I think people are playing Brand when they feel like they can't play for Vex spots, so it's like naturally inclined to be like low rolling or like behind or like playing in bad spots. Yes. There's also context of these stats, but the reality is the patch just feels behind, and I think that's like the summary of it. And I didn't know exactly what Dishop was referring to. Dishop actually made comments beforehand saying that he felt like the next patch might have to have a B patch, and I wasn't exactly sure what he was talking about. But now having seen this, I think there should be some. There's probably going to be a likelihood where they should consider something like that, pending on it. In the ideal world, we don't get one, but I do think that there's some overcorrections. There's some big swings that have potential. Right, we're talking about the stuff that didn't need to get buffed, but stuff like this, right? Like Aphelios getting crazy buffed, Anima Squad getting big buff, even just like the 1 costs having like a big impact on how things played out. The system designs of a bunch of stuff. Like there's a huge patch. It's so hard to predict. Like everything that we could think could be broken, it could be something else. So who knows? It's a huge patch, but hopefully Riot's like open to it. But overall, I'm very anxious about the upcoming patch. We'll just put it that way. We'll see what ends up happening. I keep an open mind because, quite frankly, I'm just kind of over this patch. I hope that I'm not on the official channel yet. I think they may have done that, but I'm kind of over this patch. I'm ready for a new patch, and I'm just ready for something new, man. I think that's pretty what it comes down to. So